Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. In this episode, join us as we go back to 2006 and catch up with Amy Winehouse and her incredible album, Back to Black. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Dean Legiro here, along with Eric Kuber.
Hello.
I would say he's sitting by my left side or right side, but he's actually not. We're doing this in a virtual world, so he's actually in front of me. He's across from me, virtually.
I'm on the couch tonight.
He's on the couch.
I didn't feel like moving furniture around tonight. I was just, had my album walls on the other side, and we're wrapping presents and such, so I got all kinds of paraphernalia in the way, and I didn't feel like moving it.
That's it. Just,
hell with it. Just throw it.
Fire up the camera, fire up the microphone, and we go. That's how it is. I'm in my little hobbit hole hovel corner as it is, so it's not like I have anywhere to go anywhere. Just kind of stick myself in the corner. So
a little hole in the ground.
Yeah. more like under the bridge in the Hobbit. That's closer to the reality of this, but
okay.
We thank you for joining us at the 3324 podcast. Your home for the best, what we think is the best in music and film podcasting. So take the next step. You found us here, so I'm not going to ask how you found us. You did, so you're here. Join us on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group that we started a few weeks ago. It's a very vibrant community. We invite you to become a part of that community and interact with us and interact with other music and film fans as well. It's a lot of fun there. Where do you have to go? Well, you just go with 3324 podcast and you'll find us on Facebook. And if you use that same search term, we're on Instagram as well. So you can find us at both places. Check us out there. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you.
As always. Yeah.
As always. Yeah. People are tired of looking at me, so they want to look at other faces and other photos. It's, let's be honest.
Well,
so for this episode, we're this is a tale of like triumph and tragedy, or tragedy, maybe tragedy, triumph, and tragedy. I'm not sure. There's a lot of there's so much that is going on here, but in between the triumphs in between the tragedies is this triumph of Amy Winehouse and her second album, Back to Black. So let's get the stats going like we do. This way we give you some factual stuff before we get to the commentary and the chit chat. We got to drop some knowledge. That's part of the commitment that we have to you. So, right? It's kind of, it's not exactly like school because there's no assignments, there's no homework. If you remember it, great. And you know what? It'll come up in trivia one day, and then you'll be like, "What was that about Amy Winehouse? What was it? What did
you're
they say?"
You're about to be schooled.
Right,
there you go.
Dropping knowledge.
There you go.
So here we go. Back to Black was released in October of 2006. All the songs were written or co-written by Amy Winehouse, which is really important and part of the magic of this album. Mm-hmm. It was produced by Salam Remy and Mark Ronson, and they basically produced half the album each for the most part. There were 5 singles released. I'm not going to go into those because there's a lot of them. The important thing, the other 5 number that comes up, which is massive, this album won 5 Grammy Awards. Mm-hmm. Okay. Amy Winehouse was the first British woman to win 5 Grammys in one shot. Okay. She won for Record of the Year, Song of the Year for Rehab, the single Rehab, Best Pop Vocal Album, Best Female Pop Vocal, Best New Artist, and Mark Ronson took Producer of the Year for the stuff that he had done.
Yeah,
You don't see this many across the board: song, vocal, new artist, and production.
especially by a woman at that point.
Yeah, and she kind of
Yeah.
ushered in, which we'll get into it a little bit. She did usher in a wave of female artists that actually do attribute their success or
Mm-hmm.
influence to her. To round out the stats, 16 million copies sold worldwide. And she did pass away in July of 2011. So it's 10 years.
Yeah.
Since she's been gone. So we'll probably get into that a little bit more. So how did
Mhm.
you encounter Ms. Winehouse for the first time?
Oh, probably. I think it's
Was
probably
it when the album came out, or was it after?
No, I mean, I did hear a couple of songs, and I really liked what I heard, but I kind of kept it at arm's length. I think it was probably the same kind of situation that I had with Kurt Cobain,
Mm-hmm.
where it was at this point, I think she was already, I knew that she was having problems with addiction and this kind of thing. And it's hard. It's really hard to get into an artist who was struggling so much with that. And really kind of, you almost feel guilty in a sense by buying the album. It sounds weird because it's like you're attributing to their success, which they didn't like. They didn't care for the success angle of their career. They just
couldn't handle it. Yeah,
they couldn't handle it. They just wanted to put their art out there, and it's so unfortunate. Man, it's just But yeah, this album is real intense. It's when I first heard the whole thing. Well, first of all, I really enjoy the fact that it's split in the sense of the production. Like you got two different producers on this thing. So, and there's a really, really nice contrast with that, which I really, really dig. So it's almost like you and I, like we're always talking about, you're more about the polished side of things, right? This is a perfect example of this, because the stuff he did, she did with Remy was more kind of stripped down and more in the room and warmer, and which is is kind of what I like. And so yeah, this might be a really good example of that. So but I really dug it, and I just, but it's so sad. It's such a sad album, uplifted by this great music. This really great music, which I love anyways. It's soul R&B kind of thing. And sort of a neo take on like Motown and that kind of stuff back in the 60s, which was really cool stuff. Yeah,
a lot to digest here, and done really, really well. That's the key when we get into it. I got into her not when the album came out, but definitely before she passed. I can tell you that much. So it was probably I was aware of Rehab, the single Rehab, as a song that was kind of in the background. I heard it here and there. But then it was another song that really grabbed me, which was Tears Dry on Their Own. And I was like, what is this? I need to hear the rest of the album. So I'm going to say it was before her passing, but not right when the album came out. So she was still kind of popular. This was her second album and her final album. So her first album came out in 2003, and that was entitled Frank, was the name of it. And it had done okay. Nothing, pretty big in Britain. A couple of singles were big there. Didn't break over here in a big way.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, her second album, the first album was kind of more like jazz and a hip hop fusion. She was kind of known as a jazzy vocalist.
Yeah.
For the second album, the girl group influence kind of started to come to the forefront, with kind of a hybrid of Motown, maybe late 60s, early 70s Motown, soul. It just encapsulates a lot of different things, but very different from her previous album, which is kind of interesting, because usually it's such a tonal difference. Like the from the first one to this one is really a I don't even want to say 180 degree shift, but really different from where you think she would be heading with her next album. You think, oh, it would kind of develop the same themes as their first one, but no, it goes way off into this brilliant idea of embracing this kind of Motownish R&B soul sound. And you may think, oh, that sounds kind of gimmicky, right?
Right.
But
exactly. Yeah.
But no,
because the common denominator here is her voice. She's got that smoky, lounge. She, it harkens back to people like Sarah Vaughan, some of the like even some of the earlier jazz artists of the late 50s, early 60s, and her being a jazz fan. I mean, she really was into jazz when she first started out, and then she started really digging, listening on the jukebox of like these old girl groups of, I don't know if that was something that she gravitated to herself, or was it something that her producer, Mark Ronson, urged her to do. It's kind of hard to nail that down a little bit. I think,
Mhm.
you kind of get a sense of when exactly was she influenced by this music. I think the point is that I think she's always been sort of an old soul, and
Mhm.
that kind of music is, I don't think she was really a big fan of the what was going on at that point in time on the music scene. So it wasn't like she was like a lot of the other pop singers, even artists who were kind of doing what she was doing. She was doing it I don't know. I want to say more authentic, because it's just like, again, that voice of hers just really
Yeah.
carried it, and it really
Yeah.
sold it.
Well, she kind of
So
paved the way for two artists from the UK as well that also cite her as an influence.
yeah,
One is really giant, and one to a lesser extent, Adele.
yeah,
Okay, Adele
hmm
didn't really start hitting until like 2008. And if you listen to Adele's very first single, "Chasing Pavements,"
hmm
it's got a retro feel to it. It has a feel that there's this subgenre starting to emerge. And there's another artist, her name is Duffy, and she
yeah,
had a song called Warwick Avenue. Go listen to Chasing Pavements and listen to Warwick Avenue by Duffy, and you will hear what the kind of the almost the match that Amy Winehouse lit with this kind of dusty Springfield-ish, I guess, kind of throwback stuff.
hmm
But she was really the forerunner of it, and unfortunately, with her untimely passing, never really got an opportunity to continue it. But if you listen to those two other artists, you can definitely absolutely hear that they were kind of, they don't sound like Amy Winehouse, but they were definitely experimenting with that genre and that sound,
yeah,
right? Because if you take out if you take the vocals out of this Back to Black album, you
hmm
would think it could easily pass for something for the late 60s and 70s if it wasn't for the lyrical content.
right, yes,
Like you would absolutely think, wow, what is this, the backing tracks for something that never got released from Motown or something like that?
yeah,
Absolutely has an authentic feel, and not like a gimmicky, oh, we're trying to do an impression of this type of thing, you
yeah.
know?
Well, Mark Ronson brought in Sharon Jones's band, the
Yep.
Dap
The
Kings,
Dap
who
Kings.
they were the backing band on this record, and
Yep.
they're fantastic.
For his
Yeah,
stuff. For his
yeah, for
stuff.
his side of the stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So you've
And
got like two parts to this, right? Because then
yeah,
you've got Remy stuff, Salam Remy stuff that he played a lot of that stuff himself. He played a lot of the
yes,
guitars and the bass, and kind of almost DIY'd his stuff for the most part.
hmm yeah. I mean, this is a hip hop artist. He's into rap. He's in all kinds of those kind of genres. But these guys really have a really great sense of the old school groove and sort of R&B flavor, which I like. I like rap hip hop artists who channel that. I can think of like people like Outkast who've done that. Like,
Mhm.
Andre 3000 when he hit that album when that came out, and you had the other guy doing all the rap stuff, and he was more sort of soul and
Mhm.
R&B. I think of that great song he did with Norah Jones, that really short number on that record, which I absolutely loved. But yeah, like again, I just love that old time, that feel with the horns and whatever it is, whatever captures the mood. And this album really captures a lot of that, and just
Yeah.
in just little bits and pieces,
Yeah. Salam
but
Remy also worked with the Fugees.
yeah,
So that kind of puts it into that area as well. That with when they did Killing Me Softly,
hmm
um, it's that throwbacky feel, but also modern feeling, and it's amazing that she's record or Mark Ronson. She's working with Mark Ronson in New York, and then working with Salam Remy in down in Florida.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, and two different ways of working, but they managed to achieve something that's pretty cohesive. It doesn't sound so it doesn't sound so bracing where it's like, oh, this is one person's stuff. they have different techniques and different ways of doing it, and maybe Mark Ronson's was a little more wall of soundish,
Yeah.
perhaps a little more Phil Spector-ish. Would that be the
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, but like Remy stuff was, like I said, it was a little bit more stripped down. So it almost, but it's all in the mix, right? I mean, you get the right engineer in there, and then mix it in all together, and you could say that it is a cohesive album. You wouldn't know,
Mhm.
because it definitely has just enough polish on his side of it where it kind of flows in, and just enough reverb, enough of that happening. Of course, with Ronson stuff, it's more, you get this brash stuff with the horns and that real funky kind of stuff going on there. But yeah, I like a lot of the slower songs too, though. Love is
Yeah.
a Losing Game, probably one of my favorites. That's a beautiful song, and I just oh goodness, it's like, it's sad though. I listen to it, and it's not an album that I can really find myself, unfortunately, returning to a lot, because
Yeah.
it's just so.
But
I can't,
we talked about, when we did the Jewel episode,
yeah,
we talked about how, from Jewel's point of view, it was like her diary about how she was striking out on her own.
That's
and,
right.
and kind of living a life. This is a diary of a different type. I mean, this is a very blunt kind of, not in your face in that way,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of it's a documentation of heartbreak and,
Yep.
and loss of love and addiction in some ways as well, or using alcohol to ease the pain of heartache and loss, and using that as kind of a medication. Her self-awareness is very it's kind of almost scary, because she's so good at writing. Like the lyrics that she writes, and the way she understands even the bad things about what she's doing,
Mm-hmm.
and how she kind of does need to, or she should stop.
Yeah.
It's very, it's kind of, you're not almost, you have to read the lyrics really. You listen to the songs, and they're kind of up tempo-y, and they're throwbacky, so you think, oh, this is kind of fun.
No, but you dig into the lyrics, and it's,
but you dig into the lyrics, and she's in a lot of pain. Her boyfriend at the time, who would later become her husband, had left her, gone back to his old girlfriend, and this was the source of her inspiration for her material, is the heartbreak of that, leaning on alcohol as a crutch. And it was already an issue with her. I mean, a lot of these issues were existing. They just kind of exacerbated with the heartbreak and the heartache she was going through.
It's so,
and it's not glamorized. She does not glamorize this whatsoever. So it's not like,
it's
oh,
not sugar coated.
I'm partying, I'm going
right.
out and having a cocktail. It's not like that type of stuff. This is kind of,
no, she's very much aware of what she's doing.
I'm trying not to
that's
drink.
That's the hardest thing to listen to, is when that she has, she's admitting that she needs help.
Yeah.
Her dad, I guess at the time, in the documentary, saying that her dad was telling the producers, "Oh, she doesn't need help. She's fine, or whatever."
Which goes right to the lyric in Rehab. She said, and my daddy thinks I'm fine. That was actually, her father said, "Yeah, I don't think you need to go to rehab." So
that's all she needs to hear.
Are in the lyrics. Yeah, she's like, okay,
that's her own father telling her, "You're fine. You can deal with this." Like, that's all somebody needs to hear. Oh my God, it's just
what a
heartbreaking.
Just her struggle with it. Her struggle with losing her love, and how do you deal with it? And some of the lyrics, like, I'm trying not to drink. I'm trying to keep my mind busy. Clean the house, or keep my mind not thinking about things. Really so self-aware for someone so young. I mean, she was like in her early 20s when she wrote this stuff. And it's just like, how have you gone through all of this already and be so self-aware to be able to also put it into words, to
it's one of those
words that make sense, and
it's
that,
one of those
that are just really out there.
One of those really rare examples from a songwriter that you can write a song so personal and so close to the chest, and yet it's so people can put themselves into it. Like, they can, it's sort of more generalized, and I don't know how anybody can do that from a very personal lyric and just say, well, I kind of went through the same thing. It makes it that much more universal, but it's just putting that out there it's got to be tough enough. But to for that to become a hit song, or any one of these songs to become a hit, that had to have been, I don't know, how do you feel? How does one
Yeah.
feel like when you're out there and people are loving what you're doing? Sure, but it wasn't meant to be a hit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't understand how
But
anybody could, like really enjoy that level of success when they're they're basically
yeah.
pouring their heart out.
Yeah, I
You
think
know?
Rehab was kind of a hit. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
gimmicky. It almost sounds like, yeah, it sounds like something that's not real. It's like, oh, try to make me go to rehab, and it sounds just, like, okay, this is just kind of a quirky song. So I don't think people were maybe taking that too seriously, and her problems really weren't really known as well. It's not like people knew all this stuff was going on with her.
yeah,
It only really got bad
right.
or got worse or magnified after she got really popular. So you start winning all these Grammys, you
Yep.
get all these accolades, people are always chasing you.
Mhm.
You already were susceptible to these types of things. She had also battled bulimia as a child.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that, you're just, now you're playing with fire. And then then her boyfriend comes back, Blake Fielder Civil, who, allegedly is a dirtbag. I'll use the words allegedly so we don't get in trouble, but the guy basically was. I mean, he introduced her to
yeah.
heroin. I mean, he was not a good influence on her, but she was
No,
madly in love with this guy.
yeah,
So he comes back into her life and things just get worse.
yeah,
So it's like it's a strange situation because she's lamenting the loss of her love and medicating with booze and realizing that both are a problem. She gets what she wants. This guy comes back and it's actually worse for her.
yeah. And then you had, oh, like we were saying, like her closest, like her family, and just they weren't quite there for her when they really needed. She didn't have the right
Yeah.
support system going on. Like even like I watched the documentary Amy, and there's one part that really got me where this young guy is interviewing her. I guess it was for like a sort of an MTV type thing or whatever. No, the question was, what is your idea of success?
Mhm.
And she's like, my idea of success is having the freedom to go out and work with certain people that I want to work with,
Mhm.
find the time that I could do the stuff I want to do, and blah blah. And the guy turns around and he tells her, well, you got other things to worry about too, don't you know? You got to worry about, you got people chasing you. You got to find time for that too. It's like, you have other responsibilities. He's
Yeah.
telling like this young guy, it's like, holy shit. I'm like, like this is, really? And she's like kind
Yeah.
of looking at him like, well, she goes, to that I have to say, you got to let me do my thing.
Yeah.
That was her response to that.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
my
weird.
God. It's
Yeah.
just,
Very strange.
yeah,
So let's talk about some of the music
yeah.
because I think we
Okay.
know. I mean, it's very easy to
Mhm.
kind of talk about her and the tragedy of everything. But
Oh,
again,
sure. Yeah.
wrapped in this tragedy is this album
Yeah.
that it's one of those ones you don't have to sit down. I don't think you have to sit down and listen to the whole thing at once, but it's a lot better if you do. I can pick songs out of this
I
album and
agree.
kind of listen to
Yeah.
them and really dig them. But if you listen, you can listen to the whole thing and you get listening to the whole thing is more like a time machine because you
It
really
is.
feel like you're being transported to another era when you listen to this whole thing. And again, it's not gimmicky where like she's trying to do an impression of something else. Although there are two songs they did have to credit to older artists from the 60s because they basically, what my favorite song, Tears Dry on Their Own,
Mhm.
is basically the chord progression from Ain't No Mountain High Enough, which was Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell.
Yeah.
It's literally, and I always want, I'm like, wow, this really sounds like a throwback. Well, because they used that chord progression and they built a whole new song around it,
It almost
which is,
sounds like in the very beginning, it almost sounds like they're sampling the
yeah,
beginning of that song. You
well,
even have
it's
like
very close.
the xylophone, the ding, the little
Yeah.
like the
Yeah. So
chime, like in the beginning and yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so
Yeah.
they basically use that, and then the final song is "He Can Only Hold Her," which
Mhm.
was all with the la 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 that thing.
Yeah.
That's directly from another song from the '60s as well. So they did repurpose where they needed to make their point, but they didn't just remake the song. They just used these chord progressions and backing elements to make new music with. So I'm okay with that. It's not like Zeppelin.
Yeah, they made it their own. They
Copping
kind of
stuff and saying that wasn't me, or I didn't know.
Yeah, it's much more of an homage kind of feel, but it's different enough where they change it just enough so that it does become her own thing. And
because you hear it, and it's like, this kind of sounds familiar, but I'm not sure what. So you think, I found myself thinking when I first heard Tears Dry on Their Own, I'm like, is this a cover of something else? And I'm like, no, she wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did more research, I'm like, yeah, but the backing stuff is Ain't No Mountain High Enough. So, and they reconfigure it to make it into something new. So I really, that you got to be smart to be able to do that without just recording that song. So I kind of dig that. And then there's one song on here called Me and Mr. Jones.
Oh yeah.
And the original, do you know what the original working title was?
No.
The original title was Fuckery.
Okay, yeah.
Because the second line is, what kind of fuckery is this? And I'm like, that's just a great line. Like, whoever says anything like that.
Right.
So she presented that, and they're like, you can't call it that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't call it that. So this was a wink. It's Me and Mr. Jones is a wink to Me and Mrs. Jones by Billy Paul.
Yeah.
But it's not that song. It's actually about the rapper Nas, whose last name is Jones. So she's very clever with her wordplay. It's one of those albums where each one's like a story. It really is. There's not throwaway lyrics in here. Sometimes some artists, the lyrics are in service of the music.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the music is in service of the lyrics.
And it's her phrasing too. The way, you have to write lyrics to the way you sing. So she's wonderful at that kind of phrasing of that sort of jazzy.
Yeah. And a little bit of sass, a little bit of emphasis.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
She's on the lower register of the vocal range. So she goes down low, she can go low as well, which you don't hear a lot of female artists do. Usually it's the higher the better, and how high can we go? Like, let's hit the upper stratosphere of the scales.
Yeah.
She's on the lower end, so I kind of like that as well. It gives you a different feel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's another song that it's not one of the hits, but I think it's the second to the last song on the record, and it has that kind of
Some Unholy War.
Yeah. It has that sort of that vibe to it as well. I mean, every song is an experience, but it's like you say, it's like a story. It's not just like, ooh, I'm crying today because I'm feeling bad. It's like you're literally taken into whatever the actual experience is. Like, it is like a diary, an entry. Yeah. Like
one was about an affair. One was about an affair she had. Yeah. So trying just to remain friends. So there's all these different aspects. It's all wrapped in this, in the heartache and the breakup of her relationship. So, but it's all these different parts of it. It's not, like you said, it's not the same thing over and over of poor me, because she certainly doesn't she kind of understands where she's at, and she knows that she should, try and do better. Again, Tears Dry on Their Own has such good lyrics, and it's like, learn to be my own best friend. Yeah. Instead of not getting involved with these men that are just awful for me. So there's a lot of introspection. It's just, unfortunately, she wasn't able to take her own advice. So she kind of saw what her flaws were. Some of them she accepted, that I drink. I don't know. I don't need to go to rehab. Once my man comes back, I won't need the bottle anymore. It's really it's somewhat intense subject matter that she's dealing with, because you can tell that it's coming right from her, especially knowing all of everything that happened to her.
I wonder,
this wasn't just like lyrics written to tell a story, some made up thing, right?
It's not. It's like I said. It's not generalized. It's like, we're not just, I'm like, somebody just writes a lyric about heartache. It's my heartache. It's her, her heartache. It's her, what she was going through right at that moment. Even, I mean, it could be that specific. I wonder though, what would she have been doing had she survived? Had she carried? I don't know. I mean, would she have made another album like this? What kind of experiences would she be having?
Yeah. Well, she was on that trail.
The more popular she got, would she have? I don't know.
She might have dipped back and forth. She obviously can handle different genres, right? It's not like this was
Yeah.
she's not like a one-trick pony. She did start recording more stuff after. And some of it was the throwback stuff. She had done a duet with Tony Bennett. She had done a cover of the girl from Ipanema, and she had done some of that older stuff. So she was maybe on her way to being maybe put pigeonholed into that. But I don't think she would have allowed herself to do that, because she plays guitar. There's footage online of her just strumming a guitar and playing as well. So she's not just a vocalist who can write really good songs. I think had she continued, I think she would have evolved and done different things. Would she have had the career like Adele? Probably not. I don't think so, but not everybody, we don't need two Adeles. We need one Adele and one Amy Winehouse, right?
Right.
I mean, because they bring different things to the table. Adele has people write songs for her for the most part, right? As far as I know. And what Winehouse brings is that Dylan-esque, or that personal feeling and those personal issues that she's able to put into words and put into lyrics. And her lyric writing is just so smart. I mean, that's what I was listening to the album today and sitting with it, reading the lyrics. And I'm like, God, she's just so self-aware and really understands. And the lyrics are not like simple words too. I mean, she just really had a grasp on how to make stuff that was listenable, yet deal with these kind of, uncomfortable things and uncomfortable aspects of her life. And like I said, she doesn't glamorize it and make it sound like, oh, I'm partying and having a great time.
And she kind of did the same thing though with Frank, her first record, and she didn't like Frank very much. I recall her saying that a lot of the stuff that she was going through at that point in time with her an ex-boyfriend was a totally different situation, and the lyrics that she had written for that stuff, this was like she was really, really angry and really kind of probably a lot more sort of Alanis Morissette kind of feel. Like it was like jazzy, but it was like, this is like F you this, and
a little more angsty.
And angsty. Yeah, exactly. So, I just recall her saying that she doesn't really like the album very much. I think it's fine. I mean, it is different. It is, I like the jazz and, feel of it, but it's, for someone to say that, like I could be so personal, but I could also, I don't have to like it either.
Yeah.
That takes courage too. It's like, this is, and some people might disagree and say, oh, this is just more the same, or that she's very, she's like that all the time and that kind of thing. But, when you really think about what you're going through in your own personal life, it's not always going to be the same kind of situation. So you're, not that this situation is necessarily was any better. I think it's actually kind of worse, but
unfortunately,
she found success as a result. And I think she really enjoyed the making of this album and playing with these people, and the music side of it really, I think, really encouraged her and inspired her to do better, I think.
Yeah. And unfortunately, she doesn't have the benefit of hindsight for this album. Like, kind of like when we did our Tom Petty episode, right? Petty at the time didn't realize his marriage was falling apart. It wasn't until he looked back on the album and said, wow, okay, there was a lot of stuff there that I didn't realize that had meaning. Yeah. Right. So she never got the opportunity to look back on this album and assess and say, well, this is, was she able to come out of it? Obviously she wasn't able to, but had she been able to, would have been interesting to see what her perspective was on it afterwards. Cause this album came out and it was like a shot across the bow, not only for female singers, but just for pop music. I mean, 5 Grammys. I mean, that is, 1 Grammy is enough. Album of the year, or any of you could pick any of the 5 she won, probably maybe except for best producer. And I'm sure any artist would be happy to grab one of those. And she took 5 in one shot, which was like unheard of for someone that was basically unheard of in the States, for her to come out of nowhere. But that kind of also might've been the sounding of the bell that things were not going to go well, because after that, she had the record company was pressing for another release. I'm recording, supposedly I'm recording, but then, 2000, this came out in 06, 08 comes and goes. Maybe in 2010 we'll have something. The record company says nothing ever came back out. She, there was an album released afterwards with, studio outtakes and just like one-offs that she did, but there was never anything cohesive that could have been said, well, this was what the direction would have been, because she was just doing some one-off singles and this, that, and the other thing. So it's kind of
yeah,
hard.
And of course, the obligatory like re-release of Back to Black 3 times over with the remixes and all this other BS. It's like, that's obviously not something that she would have probably would have dug, like, but
it did.
Also, her grandmother, the death of her grandmother really
hit her very hard. Yeah.
That was later. That was a little bit later on. So that kind of,
Yeah, she thanks her grandmother in the album credits. She thanks the Shangri-Las, the girl group of the 60s, in the credits as well. So you can see that the influences are definitely there.
Ronnie Spector.
About the album, about the audio aspects of the album.
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot of complaints that people, that whether you listen to it on CD or the vinyl or whatever, as great as the album is, a lot of complaints about the mastering of it, that it just doesn't sound great and crisp and clear. Like, and I noticed it on my vinyl copy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have the fidelity that other albums you would think, because they weren't going for a totally retro. They were going for a retro sound, a retro feel, but not a retro sound, not to sound like it was from back then, meaning as far as fidelity.
Okay. So you're saying I think I've experienced that as well. You don't have the balance, right? Because I have only ever listened to it on streaming.
Yeah,
I don't actually own it.
It kind of isn't there. It's kind of, you listen to it and it sounds sometimes a little crackly. So I don't know if it's just a victim of mastering or whatever, but
I think
that's just an audiophile side note. We just went off on a little.
Well, it has that kind of polish to it for sure, and again, a lot of this old time stuff does have a lot of high end, which tends to be the preferred range for, like, if you say the word pop music, that's generally, if you were to translate that into some, like, an equalizer in your head, like all of a sudden, like when you buy a brand new car, right? You check your levels in the car and you set the level. They already have preset levels of what a pop song should sound like. Everything's in the above register.
Oh, of course.
There's no bottom end whatsoever. So perhaps that was what they were trying to go for. Was this sort of like tinny, very, sort of in the can kind of thing, which if you're anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a big fan of Phil Spector and that wall of sound. We talk, like All Things Must Pass, George Harrison's album. Love that album, but I hate the way it sounds. Like, I hate the production on it. And it's just like that.
Maybe we'll get another look at it, perhaps.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Speaking about the producers, here's a really fun, deep piece of trivia. Very deep piece of trivia.
Okay.
Mark Ronson.
Mm-hmm.
You know who his stepdad is?
I do not.
Okay.
Leave it to you to find the
Mark Ronson's stepdad is Mick Jones, who is the leader of the group Foreigner.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Mick Jones wrote the song "I Want to Know What Love Is." He wrote that about his wife, which would be Mark Ronson's mother, who was kind of dating at the time and getting to know.
Mm-hmm.
So the song "I Want to Know What Love Is" about Foreigner is about the producer Mark Ronson's mother.
Nice.
That's his stepdad. They ended up getting married, and that became his stepdad. So he lived in New York, and Mark Ronson became a DJ, and then became a big time producer. I mean, Ronson worked with the who's who of artists. I mean, Lady Gaga. Mm-hmm. He was just with everybody. So this was kind of a breakout for him. But she was working with top flight people, and like you said, the Dap Kings and the late Sharon Jones backing band in New York bring that authenticity.
Yeah.
To what they were trying to get, because if you listen to Sharon Jones stuff, it's got that same feel.
It does.
And the Dap King. So it's in that kind of arena. So Mark Ronson knew exactly what to go for. Up in New York, he had it kind of like his home team, right? And then Salam Remy down there had his own thing going. So it's really kind of interesting that these two totally different producers, one slicker, like you said, more of Spector-ish, and then the other one a little more stripped down, were able to kind of come together. And you really, I mean, and the way the songs are arranged, maybe if they split them equally, if it was one side per, maybe you could feel a through line of, okay, this has one sound and one, but the way the tracks are arranged are really well that you don't really feel that there's something different going on.
No, You don't.
It feels like a different style, a different style of song, but not a different like sounding song per se.
Yeah,
as far as the production.
I mean, there have been albums by people who have multiple producers on them, and you can definitely tell. I seem to recall. Oh my God, what's a good example? Stevie Nicks, when she did her Rock a Little, right? I think there was like 6 different producers on that record. And you could definitely tell. I mean, it's like such a big, and this was like the late 80s. So maybe it was a little bit harder back then to achieve a more cohesive sound.
Well,
but
if that's not what she was, maybe she might have just wanted to work with different producers and whatever
and
they
have
brought,
a different,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So sort of an eclectic feel. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're going for a similar sound, you usually will stay with one person because they're going to deliver and understand what you want. And you're kind of like, okay, this is the project we're working on and we're going to do it together. So working with 2 radically different producers it was a big gamble, but it paid off because it does not sound disjointed. That's the word I was looking for. It does not sound disjointed when you listen to this. Absolutely. Just some great stuff. So what are some top tracks for you?
Yeah. Some of my, I love, well, as far as the hits go, me and Mr. Jones is one of my favorites. I love Just Friends.
Mm-hmm. That's the slower. So you like some of the slower stuff.
I like the stuff that Remy did, and Tears Dry on Their Own is a great one. I do love Some Unholy War.
So you're definitely skewing towards the kind of the slower, torchier.
The Remy, yeah, the more the Remy Salam, the Salam Remy stuff, yeah. That side of it. But no, I do dig, the sort of like,
See, I'm skewing the other way because I like some of the throwbacky wall of sound stuff that Ronson was doing, like with there's strings and there's hand claps and there's like the bell, like the not a cowbell, but actual like bells that you would hear,
which she wasn't a fan of. Ironically enough, she didn't like strings and stuff. Like she thought it sounded cheesy. Right. But when Ronson did it,
it worked.
He just went ahead and did it. Like he didn't really care what she thought. I from what I gather, I mean, watching the making of the album documentary,
you're going to get what you're going to get, and you're going to like it. And
it was a gamble.
Win us all Grammys. We're all going to win Grammys on this.
This is a great producer. Like sometimes you got to put that trust, right? Yeah. So he thought it was a good idea, and he did it.
Yeah.
And she did end up loving it. So, but he was nervous about it. He was like, yeah, I don't know if she's going to, if she's going to flip out over this or whatever. Cause I know she hates strings. She hates that, she likes the real, at that point, I think she was really more into working with Salam Remy and just that sort of in the room feel, but that's what she was used to. But I think Ronson brought a totally different, level and working with the Dap Kings. And, I think she really enjoyed, these guys are pros. These, wow, I didn't expect this kind of thing. I thought it was going to be cool, but I didn't expect this level of cool. Yeah. Like, like it was just bringing in the horns and all that kind of stuff. It had to have been like such a great,
I'm going to go with Back to Black, the title track.
Okay.
Of course, like, oh my God. If you listen to one song, please just listen to Tears Dry on Their Own. If you've never listened to this album, her vocal performance is it's so on point. It is just right there. The song has the energy to it that made, like, this was the song that really made me like say, I need to listen to this album. Like, I didn't hear there was 5 singles released. I don't recall hearing any of those other ones. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I found Tears Dry on Their Own, but when I did, I was like, that did it for me. And I'm gonna skew towards the Ronson stuff. Is Back to Black and Love Is a Losing Game.
Yeah.
He can only hold her, which has that throwback.
Yeah.
That they used from another group. From 1966. It was a song.
Yeah, I love the backing vocals on that one.
Yeah,
and the fancy did it, like the horns in that song. It recalls sort of like exactly.
That's right from that song from the 60s. We should put it. I'll put it in the show notes.
It almost sounds like Bee Gees too, right? Nobody gets too much heaven anymore, right? It's like that
little bit. Yeah, it's got that horn, that horn sound. Yeah. What we'll do is we'll link in the show notes to the 2 songs that were kind of reconfigured, so you can kind of hear the originals too. and compare them and kind of get a feel for what they were trying to achieve. But yeah, let's see. It looks like you
I see.
predicted it in the beginning. You said,
we would prefer certain tracks. Yeah, but
although Tears Right on Their Own was done by Remy Salam.
Yes, it was. But Love Is a Losing Game, which I like, was done by Ronson.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's the trade-off. Right?
We've each got one of the opposite.
And here's an interesting, I'm looking
others.
at the credits here, and it was co-written, Tears Dry on Their Own, with Ashford and Simpson.
That's because it was Ain't No Mountain High Enough. They got the credit for that. They had to give them the credit. Ashford and Simpson got the credit because that was who wrote it back then, who wrote the Tammy Terrell and Marvin Gaye. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Just like with He Can Only Hold Her, Richard and Robert Poindexter got songwriting credit because they basically used the backing track and the backing arrangement from that song. I can't remember what the song was.
Well, good. They gave them the credit. That's
absolutely.
Great.
From the jump, they absolutely. Like I said earlier, it wasn't like a Led Zeppelin thing where they just like took it and then said, we didn't know.
We didn't know.
We didn't know. Stupid us. We didn't know. We're just a band. What do we know? We're just musicians. So
yeah, right.
They that didn't work. They did it with intention, so they gave credit where credit was due.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike, Lindsey Buckingham fixed his issue. So you brought that.
Here we go.
That to my attention, but he fixed it. So anyway,
yeah, that was wild.
That's an instance of someone writing something and then forgetting that you thought you wrote it, and you'll just have to go look it up. We'll talk about Lindsey Buckingham and his plagiarism another day. It all turned out for the better at the end. So, but yeah,
how many people have? Let's examine. Let's talk. Like, how many people have actually done this though? Like George Harrison. We talk. That's one of the most famous.
One of the more recent ones was, do you know the artist Sam Smith from the UK?
Yeah, and that was the Tom Petty.
Yeah, Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne.
Yeah,
his song was called "Stay With Me," I believe.
Yeah, Stay With Me.
And they said, you know what, this middle part, that song is a very slow song, and it might be a little bit of a stretch, but they said when you speed up the chorus, it's the chord progression from "I Won't Back Down."
Yeah, it is.
And Petty and Jeff Lynne, they were not looking to sue. It was the record company that went after them. They weren't particularly because Petty has
they might have made the mistake of actually pointing it out, and then the record company's like, "Ooh, we could do something like this," because this was MCA, right?
They weren't looking to cash in on it, but the record company did. So then they ended up getting songwriting credits. So that song by Sam Smith is written by whoever, and Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne wrote that. And I don't know what the cut is, but that happens, I guess, quite often, and sometimes it happens by accident. You really aren't looking to.
I hope I'm not getting anybody into trouble here, but I'm going to point out one song that I always thought was a complete ripoff, and that's "Misunderstanding" by Genesis, because that riff is like Phil was channeling Toto, right? He was Rosanna, or not Rosanna, but that. Oh God, what was that? What was the song? Was it Rosanna?
Hold the Line.
I think Hold the Line. Might be that.
So? I'm not sure.
But for me, it sounds, because he mentioned Toto, but that's where he kind of got the dun, 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 dun. But to me, that riff comes from Sly and the Family Stone. If you listen to Hot Fun in the Summertime, and it even has like the tinkling piano, like the ding 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 ding, like when you listen to the chorus part. And then it sounds, it's not only does it is the same chord progression, but it sounds like the song, like what Genesis did sounds like Sly and the Family Stone, like the exact.
I mean, there's only a certain amount of chords that make sense to fit together,
right?
And sometimes it is. We've heard where artists say this is absolutely influenced by it, right? And you say, oh, this is an homage to somebody, or I want to make a song that sounds like Led Zeppelin, and you get Greta Van Fleet, right? They're not ripping them off, but they're sounding close.
Yeah.
And then there are some artists or people that write songs and they use the same chord progressions as other artists, but they don't necessarily realize it. And they said, listen, there's no way I would have ever heard that song. I didn't know. It's an honest mistake.
Well, that's the thing. I think, if you're a musician, you hear it in your head that there are certain chords that type of music is what was written. Like that, these are the key. These are the keys. The notes and the keys and the chord progression. This is what you think that particular type of music is.
Yeah,
you know.
and you try
In the
and,
case
well,
of
I
Phil
want to try and do
Collins, like,
something
yeah,
like it.
I'm a big Motown fan. I'm a big
Yeah.
R&B fan. Though that is the chord progression for that kind of material, you know.
Yeah, and
So,
then there's
you know,
just straight out theft like George
well,
Harrison with, My Sweet
well,
Lord, and there's
yeah.
just out and out theft like Led Zeppelin. So, back to Amy Winehouse. She the record company was concerned with her and what was going on. Again, the bulimia had kind of taken root again. She had gotten really thin, trying to help her along. And so she decided to do a tour after the album. And unfortunately, you can find this stuff on YouTube.
Mm.
Just not good. I mean, I don't think I saw a performance in anything I was looking at where she was sober. And she wasn't
Yeah.
finishing songs. She had there was one performance. She literally had a plastic, solo cup of beer in her hand, and she couldn't wait to finish singing each line of the song so she can get to the beer. I mean, she was almost more interested in the beer, unfortunately.
Right.
And, we don't know what was going on in her life. She was married at the time, but she was having troubles with that guy, the bulimia. So that probably put her system, compromised her system as well. And then she ended up passing away from alcohol poisoning. So,
Yeah. The death of her grandmother, I think, turned her back.
Yeah,
she started drinking really heavily.
Yeah, put her on the path to not doing well again. And
so I think she found, which that's the point. You get to that point where you find any excuse, or anything bad had happened. You could stub your toe. That's sometimes that's how bad things can get. I think with some people, it's just like any excuse to I'm hurting. I'm going to self-medicate today.
Yeah, and it seems like her blessing was her curse.
Yeah.
Her blessing for being able to put these emotions into words was also the curse that she was burdened with, because she was not able to also have the self-realization that this is not something that could be sustained.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, when you watch these clips, you're looking at someone, you're like, this is just a matter of time. And it's unfortunate. The fortunate part was we were left with this document, this amazing album, which absolutely is just something special. And maybe made more poignant by the circumstances that happened afterwards. It was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that happened with her heartbreak and her struggles with alcohol and substances. But wow, I mean, it's about burning brightly. I mean, 2 albums and that was it. And this one, her second one was the monster. This is not like something you've never heard of and you need to discover it. This was an absolute beast of an album.
Should this album be construed as a sort of a cautionary kind of an album, like this is what you don't do kind of thing? You think people are looking at it that way?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, because the lyrics are, like I said, they don't really glamorize what she's doing.
No, but musically, it goes off on a different tangent. But lyrically, yeah, it's like it is that personal. So you almost feel like, because of the circumstances, would this album, are people looking at this album and saying, oh, well, this is the sort of go-to album when somebody's dealing with this or something, or we could use this as perhaps in that kind of situation.
It's a good question, because I mean, the lyrics deal mostly with heartbreak. The substance abuse and the alcohol was the medication for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think this album is very cathartic. It seems like this is someone working through this.
Yeah.
And getting these thoughts out, getting them into lyrics and creating music, and hopefully being able to get yourself on the path towards putting it behind you. But that just didn't happen. It just seems like things actually got worse afterwards, which
afterwards,
you don't really think happens. Usually when someone has something like this, it also comes with that realization of, this is something that's happening to me, and wow, I need to try and fix it. And she didn't really ever try and fix it. Anything she did,
only she had the support system and the opportunity.
I think that was the key.
She
had no one saying no to her, like, stop,
right, or to have that people backing her and saying, because when she's making the album, she wasn't drinking. When she was working with Remy in Miami, he basically pointed that out. She didn't drink at all during those sessions. She came to the table very professional, very ready to work. It's a shame that she couldn't do this. This could be a thing, and that she didn't have the people to back that up, to say, no, she needs to work. She needs to, she needs to get into the studio. This is what she needs to do to get her away from that situation. I think the fame and the success really drove her. She couldn't handle it. She didn't know how to handle. She didn't know what. That's a whole nother level of
surrounded by enablers, basically. I mean,
exactly.
Family didn't really do much to, no, you're fine. No,
right.
Not really.
And then really. Unfortunately, she is now, which we didn't mention, is she has become another member of the 27
Club. Yep.
Which
passed away when she was 27, and we talked about that in the Nirvana episode.
This could be an entire episode in itself. Yeah. I mean,
we talked about it maybe in the Doors episode as well. It was the 27 Club is Morrison, Hendrix, Joplin, Nirvana, Cobain, and her. So
that's right.
Very, very unfortunate statistic. I love statistics, but that's not one I really enjoy talking about. It's just not
it's
a great
eerie,
one,
actually.
But it is. It's
when
very
you think about
creepy.
it.
So, that I think that's going to do it for Back to Black. Not Back in Black, but back to black. So we need to clarify that by the excellent, Amy Winehouse. Such a tragedy, but she left us with a piece of work that will stay with you if you sit and listen to this and you read the lyrics. It's much more powerful that way. It's got this. It fools you into thinking, oh, this is throwbacky, which it is, but the content that she's dealing with is really the document of someone that's going through some stuff, heartbreak, and you really feel she's an emotional person. I mean, she's put it all out there. So we're going to highly recommend, right? This is a high recommend.
It is.
Everything's a high recommend though on this show.
It is.
Right? We don't just say listen to it if you want
otherwise.
To. It wouldn't be like, oh yeah, just kind of listen, if you feel like it. But highly recommend this one from 2006, Amy Winehouse's Back to Black. So absolutely check it out. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the 3324 podcast. Check us out on social media. We also do live shows every other week. We stream those on Facebook and YouTube. So if you want to see what we look like for some odd reason, I'm not sure, but if you want to do that, you can see our faces and stream. And we have a lot of good time. We have a lot of interaction there. We give away prizes too, so you can win some stuff. That's fun as well. If you want to find us on Twitter, we're at 3324p. So for Eric, this has been Dean. We will see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.